Well, here we are on World Kindness Day, November 13, 2020. And I've got to tell you, every World Kindness Day, there is a significant event in the world that actually challenges kindness. In 2015, it was the terrorist attacks in Paris, and the Parisians responded with a display of forgiveness and empathy the next day. 2016, we had the election, and that was a little bit of a challenge. And 2017, it was attacks in Sydney, and we always seem to be battling our greatest challenge. And that challenge is the most successful campaign in the world. It's that successful, it can even capture those people who even oppose it. And of course, the campaign that I'm talking about is the campaign of fear and hate. And that's truly our challenge to create a kinder world, to address our own fears before we identify the fears in others. And I think this is something we've got to recognize and reflect on as we approach the election results here in the United States. I'm just outside of DC. I'm an Australian. I'm certainly unaccustomed to what is going on now. The political landscape is as divided as it's ever been, and it's a struggle. And the reason I said that it's the most successful campaign, that's the campaign of fear and hate, is because it is. It is infiltrated everywhere. And people don't even know they are being influenced by it. When you start to attack the person rather than the content or the message or the subject matter, and you turn up at in the social media arena with a virtual baseball bat, and people are afraid to speak up. People are afraid to identify because identity politics has gone through the roof. It is only designed to fuel the ongoing hate. So how do we get around this, and how does kindness have a part to play? Well, the first thing we've got to do is to actually understand what kindness really is, because there's a lot of myths about kindness. Kindness is incredibly powerful. I mean, during the First World War, kindness found a place on the bloodiest battlefield in Europe. On Christmas Eve, enemies came together, and they came together to celebrate a moment of humanity at Christmas. Kindness will find its way. It will be a light, but it takes courage. And that's what's missing at the moment, particularly in the land of the brave, the home of the brave, is courage. And kindness and courage are connected, because true kindness, and you won't find this in the dictionary, this is my interpretation, and this is how I see kindness, because people have misinterpreted it for so long. They see it as gender specific. They see it as weak, as benign, and as anything but. To me, it's about courage, because there is no act of courage that does not have an element of kindness to it, because they are both selfless. People doing something they do not want to do. It's not about a pay it forward coffee, or doing something kind for your family members, the people you love, or even your friends. It's about being kind to the unkind. Doing something you don't want to do, leaving your comfort zone, having the courage to speak up, whether it's in the playground with a child being bullied, and there's a lone voice that speaks up from another child. That takes courage, because they're putting what they value most at risk, and that is a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging that we have, that we need. Maslow said it's part of the hierarchical needs that we need a sense of belonging, right? So we do that. We seek to do that, and that might even mean joining an angry mob or not speaking up because you're concerned that you may either be targeted, fall in the crosshairs of those aggressors, or worse, excluded. And that's what we do really well, folks. That's our go-to. I mean, since we had fire, if the chief doesn't like you and you're in the tribe, guess what happens? You are banished, you're excluded. Moving along, if you're an emperor and the empire decides it no longer needs you or wants you, you are exiled. If you're in the church, you're excommunicated. If you're in the defense force, you are discharged. If you're at school, you are expelled. If you're in the church, you're excommunicated. And here's my favorite one of all. If you're in a family, you are disowned. Because we're really good at being able to hurt people. And you're probably wondering, what is this about? Why am I talking about all these horrible, nasty things? Because this is the underbelly. Kindness is not some veil that makes us all think we're being kind. We do a true self-audit on our behaviour, particularly in America, where we put our hand on our heart and make a pledge to be indivisible. Can you honestly say that everything you've done, either by word or deed, has made this country indivisible? Or have you contributed to the critical mass that has widened the divide? Now, that can happen by either a stroke of a keyboard, or it can happen by silence. Either way, you are complicit in the state of play today. Unless you are embracing authentic kindness, we don't have a chance. So forget the Webster's dictionary about the interpretation of kindness. They only went halfway. Kindness is about having the courage to be selfless. And the very best example I can give, regardless of whatever your faith is the story of the Good Samaritan. For those that don't know the story of the Good Samaritan, it's about a minority that had been treated so badly for generations by the majority that there was a tremendous divide in this country, in that country. And one day on a bridge, one of the elite, one of the majority, had been attacked and left for dead on that bridge, bleeding out. And there was a guy who was part of the minority, the Samaritans. And do you think he wanted to go up immediately and help that guy? What do you think would have happened to him if his own tribe saw him helping the enemy? And more importantly, what do you think would have happened if the majority, the other tribe, saw him leaning over an injured fellow member of their community? So no, he didn't want to do that. And he waited, because we know that two people passed by, a politician and a church member, or excuse me, it's been a long time since I've been to Sunday school, but they passed by and they walked by. And this Samaritan was compelled. His humanity compelled him to do something rather than nothing, to place himself at risk with nothing to gain. No quid pro quo. There's nothing in it for him except potential pain and exclusion. But he did it anyway. And that story resonates for thousands of years. And maybe we need to remember our history. Maybe we need to remember the lessons that we are forgetting today. Maybe we need to wake up. Kindness isn't gender specific, gentlemen. Whether it's locker room banter, if so many men, particularly men I know, and I am the status quo, right? I'm the guy. I'm a white, middle-aged guy, usually in a suit, not today. I'm the guy with the privilege. But I don't see being white as a privilege. I see it as a responsibility. And if you are in that locker room, and let's face it, everyone's been in that locker room, where we're bonding with our fellow brothers, talking about conquest, either real or imagined. And I actually had somebody in the kindness space, a friend, telling me about a conquest he had with a young girl. And he told me the story, and at the end of the story I said, I want you to imagine the exact same scenario, maybe 15 or 20 years from now. Except the person isn't you. And that young girl in that hotel room, her name is the name of your daughter. You've got to be able to bring it back so it's relatable. And you've got to be prepared, even at the risk of a friendship, to give them a nudge. You've got to be prepared to say, is this the best we can be? Even in the middle of an angry crowd. And let's face it, there are lots of angry crowds out there. They're being wound up. They're being played by that devious campaign, the campaign of fear and hate. And the reason why it's so successful, if you analyse it, and I'm a strategist, my background's been in hospitality. I did consulting for the Olympics on staffing issues. And if I deconstruct, reverse engineer the campaign of fear and hate, how did we get here? Well, it's pretty simple. It started with a conversation. A couple of guys are not happy. They're having a rant. They're in a cafe. And they're saying how bad things are. And they need to do something. So they plan. And at the business end of the campaign of fear and hate, you know where it leads. Fear and hate will lead to terror. Will lead to riots, will lead to violence. And these guys are getting ramped up, and they decide that they're going to plan an event to get attention, to get noticed, to make a statement. So they call in their friends, and they call a few more friends, and they plan something epic. And maybe they call, or they don't, but maybe we call their group a cell. Nobody owns it. Nobody controls it. It's a movement. And they go out and they do something and they film it. And that inspires other people to get angry. The other day I was called a racist because I asked a question. I asked a question about the legality of what does it mean to have a president called a president. Is it the media that nominates the president? That's my naivety with dumb Aussie. And boom! You're obviously a Trump supporter. You're racist, you're fascist. And I thought, is asking a question mean you're a fascist? Then I've got to check my US dictionary, because I am truly lost with the language over here. It's hard enough. But rather than respond with anger saying that's stupid and getting hurt, because I know my own fears, because I know the stuff that triggers me. I can understand the stuff that triggers others. And that allows me to take a breath and to empathise and to see that these people are scared, they are hurt, and it's triggering them. Kindness is about being able to be kind to the unkind and to recognise what is happening in that person's space. And that is powerful. Now, I don't know if that's going to make a difference. And honestly, some people, you can't, but you can't give up. You can't just say they're in that camp. There's only one race, and that's the human race. And it's not a competition. Because if it was, we should win. And I don't think the course that we're on now, where there is injustice, is going to be an easy path. I think we're going to have a situation where it's going to be transitional. And sweet talking platitudes that have been echoed throughout the years are not going to cut it. We're going to have real action. We're going to have to really own our space. Take a breath and understand that we contribute to the state of play in the village that takes responsibility for raising the child. We all have a part to play. And two things that I admire about the United States of America is its constitution, without question, amazing what the framers put together, a work in progress, I know, but a constitution that said all men are created equal. Now that didn't necessarily mean once they signed that it all happened overnight. It's a work in progress, and we're not quite there, clearly. But there are forces working against us to make sure we never get there. And that's manipulative forces, driven by misinformation, driven by those with an agenda that want to keep us divided. We need to be able to have uncomfortable conversations. We need to be able to talk about religion. We need to be able to talk about politics. We need to be able to talk about education and anything we want, and racism and all the rest of it. We need to be able to talk about it on a foundation of kindness, conversations in kindness, where we are not afraid to be able to express an opinion, a thought, an idea. Because kindness doesn't try to intimidate you or shout you down or belittle you. And those framers really had a tough job. That country was a mess. They'd been through war. But we have been able to reconcile with foreign wartime enemies that are now our closest allies. So why can't we reconcile within our own borders? What's stopping us? Nothing. Nothing. Just you and me. That doesn't mean you accept the status quo. That doesn't mean you accept the toxic culture. It means you put kindness on the agenda. Because it doesn't stand a hope of change unless kindness is on the agenda. And if you do a word search for kindness in your organisations, in your lesson plans, in your company manuals, to look for the word kindness, rarely will you find it. I can guarantee you. How many of you watching right now have been to a job interview or conducted an interview where kindness came up, where you specifically kindness, where you said, do you think kindness is important in the workplace? Can you give me an example of that? When was a time that you were unkind? How did it make you feel? How do you reflect on that now? When was a time that somebody was kind to you? How did that make you feel? And more importantly, when you were kind to somebody, what happened? What have you learned from this? Now, if those questions get put into an interview, What's it going to do? It's going to tell you a lot about the candidate, because you can have these top guns. They're all going to, on paper, they all qualify. They've already been shortlisted. But when you're facing them face to face and you throw that on the table, they're not going to have a pre-rehearsed answer for you, are they? They're going to be caught on the spot, and you'll be able to tell when somebody is authentic. But more importantly, when they leave and they're looking at their next job, which is equally as good as yours, what's going to be the point of difference? Something to consider, something to think about. Now, going back to that constitution where all men are created equal, I know it's not politically correct today, but that's what it says. All people are created equal. There's an amendment. It had a ripple effect. A ripple effect that went across the ocean to a foreign land, to a farm in South Africa, to a young boy called Nelson, who embraced that idea, and to the streets of India, to a young lawyer called Gandhi. And of course, closer to home, in Atlanta, to a son of a preacher called Martin. And they embraced that ideology that all men are created equal. And they decided they could not do nothing. One guy sat in prison for 27 years thinking there will be an end to apartheid. I mean, how insane is that? Another guy had an unshakable belief. Have you ever had an unshakable belief? Do you know what that means? It means you don't give up. He had an unshakable belief despite the rule of the British Empire, the most powerful country in the world at the time, that through peaceful protest, he could find independence for his country. And of course, another man had a dream to which he sacrificed, paid the ultimate sacrifice with his life. They all did. Even though people were saying to them, settle down, don't speak out, it's not worth the drama. But today those names echo in the corridors of governments. We revere them. But if we truly revere them, why are we at each other's throats? Because it's hard. It is hard to have the courage to be kind. You know why it's hard? Because the other thing that I revere about particularly America, and the fact that we've just acknowledged Armistice Day, also known as Veterans Day, is that we revere those who serve, because we know that they are there to protect all of us. And according to the polls, they wouldn't like 50% of us. But they are prepared to take a bullet for people they don't even know. And that's why we honour them. They fight for us to ensure that we have a free country where we can express our opinions, where we can go and vote, and where every person has a voice. But our best and bravest in your country and in mine sought the safety of silence. When their own people they did know were being abused, attacked, raped, assaulted, discriminated against, excluded and bullied. And if somebody in the ranks or broke from the ranks and had the courage to speak up, what happened? We know what happened. They circled the wagons to protect a brand. How many people are all about brand protection, whether it's your personal brand or your corporate brand? If you want to protect your brand, you do it from within. Because spin doesn't work anymore. People will see through it. Symbolic displays of support for blah, blah, blah isn't going to cut it. If you're within your own company, you allow the culture to be driven by bottom line management, by bottom line thinking. You want to improve your bottom line? You do it by ensuring you have a healthy culture. People want to go to work. They want to be there. But in the Defence Force, these brave men and women, their sense of belonging overrode their sense of doing what is right. Now, that's not an indictment. Because remember I said, two things I value most in this country is your constitution and the people and your reverence for those who serve. But what it is letting you know kindness is the path of most resistance. It's not a journey you undertake lightly. In my world, kindness for the last 10 years has been a path of most resistance. It has not been easy. And I can tell you right now, we need all hands on deck. Because healing has no space for labels. Healing has no space for judgment. We need to take a breath and connect to the humanity. Being kind to those you perceive to be unkind. Walking the talk. So with that, I leave you and I wish you a happy World Kindness Day. Thank you very much.